Okay. All right. So today is our second part of our DNA classes. The first one, we kind of just went over what DNA was and some of the ways that we can use it. I really love DNA. It's like an ultimate mystery. If you look on TV, there are shows like DNA Detective and all these fun things, but it's kind of hit or miss sometimes. You're relying on other people who have taken the test. So in one person that I was helping, we found her mom in 5.5 hours. And we found her dad over a year later because there were more people on her mom's side that had taken the test. In fact, a first cousin had taken the test. And so it was a little easier to trace that. Whereas on the dad's side, we had to trace to figure out who the possibilities might be and then ask for a DNA test from that person, from one of the relatives. So it's a lot of fun, but it can be kind of nerve-wracking a little, especially when you're really close and you're just looking for that right connection. But I have a lot of fun doing it, and I hope you guys will too. The first thing I want to talk about is ethnicity. So a lot of times people will take their DNA test to find out their ethnicity. And it's like that commercial for Ancestry where the guy said he grew up thinking he was one ethnicity, and then he took the test and traded in his lederhosen for something else. I probably wouldn't do that right away because the ethnicity is an estimate. It's like saying, there's a good chance that you get this set of DNA from this particular group or from people in that geographical area. So it's kind of a numbers game, and it changes. What they do is they compare your DNA to DNA patterns found in certain geographical regions, and then each company has their own comparison information. So your DNA, if you take it in Ancestry, isn't compared to the people in 23andMe automatically. There are ways that you can do it. So your ethnicity is going to be different with each company that you test with or share your DNA with. And as more people test, the data is going to change. It's just like any science experiment. The more samples you have, the more you can refine your data. So ethnicity can be helpful sometimes when you're comparing a DNA match within the same company, because they're using the same standards to determine DNA ethnicity within that same company. So if you're comparing within that same company, then that's okay. And just as of, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe only a week ago, Ancestry has come up with a new tool, and it will take your DNA and it will split it to what ethnicity comes from your mom and what ethnicity comes from your dad. Ancestry is. So it's called Ethnicity Inheritance. And the first, let's see, in the middle is my ethnicity breakdown. And then what they've done is gone through and said, we believe this is where you get in the ethnicity from parent one, what you get from parent one, and this is what you get from parent two. So we can see most of my Swedish comes from my mom, and I get a little bit of Swedish from my dad. On my mom's side, her dad came from Sweden in 1912. She's half Swedish. This makes sense to me. On my dad's side, my great-great-grandmother was full blood Swedish. And so this can be helpful to kind of help decide where you might be coming from. So far, this is the only company I know, though, that has done this, has this particular tool. And like I said, it's only a couple weeks old.
So is it on Ancestry now?
It's on Ancestry now. So when you go on to Ancestry, look at your DNA story and look for the ethnicity and inheritance. In fact, Ancestry just did a update to their ethnicities, percentages and stuff. So if you go on now, it's going to bring up a little thing saying, we've updated. Do you want to see what your new ethnicity groups are? And so when you go through that process, it'll tell you about it.
Hey, Pam, does
Yes.
this require the parents to have taken a DNA test?
No. So they call it kind of sideways ethnicity. I think what they're doing is looking at your matches and see, because neither of my parents have tested on Ancestry. And they are pretty accurate as to what my written genealogy looks like. So I'm not sure the technique that they've used, but it doesn't require your parents to have tested.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so ethnicity is a lot of fun. And like I said, you're going to get different results depending on the company. So I've tested with 2 companies, Family Tree DNA and Ancestry, and I've shared my DNA with other companies, MyHeritage and GEDmatch. So we're going to just talk about 3 of them. So for Ancestry, when I first did it, 31% Swedish, 28% Welsh, 21 England, Northwestern Europe, 12% Norway. I'm not going to read them all. We go to Family Tree. They group all of the Finland, Norway, and Sweden together. I'm 59% Scandinavian, 22% Irish.
Oh, well.
I'm not sure I can find any Irish people in my genealogy.
There's your bill. You got 2% down there.
But, you know, again, they're just comparing to the other people in their group and trying to find common matches, common segments from those different geographical areas. And then in MyHeritage, I'm 58% English and 33% Scandinavian. So then jump to a year later. In Ancestry, my Swedish has gone up a little. My Welsh has gone up a little. Norway's about the same, and the others about the same. England just dropped. Family Tree DNA, it's relatively the same across the board on that one. MyHeritage, it stayed the same. So you can see that it's going to change over time. And that Ancestry one I just showed you wasn't the one as of last week, but I don't think there were a lot of changes there either. So then we're gonna talk about direct line DNA. We were just talking about how sometimes family trees look like wreaths, and sometimes you get multiple grandparents on a fan chart after you get many generations back. What we're going to talk about right now is a perfect world where, you know, you have just single individuals in your fan chart. And we'll start with us, our mother and father, grandparents, and then we have our great grandparents. And our great grandparents, they share, each one shares half the DNA for the grandparents. And then those grandparents share that with their children. And then it gets shared with us. So the percentages of DNA passed on for generation, ideally, are about 50% from the top generation to the next, then about 25, and then about 12.5. So it kind of divides in half every time. And again, those are abouts, because the amount of DNA that tested is only a short portion, a very small portion of the DNA that is actually there. And so of the DNA being tested, you might get a little more from one grandparent than the other. And then there's sibling DNA. A lot of people are like, well, doesn't my brother or sister have the same DNA that I do? And that's not necessarily true, because again, it varies which DNA gets passed on each time. So even though our blue and purple parents have the same DNA, they pass only certain letters to one child and certain letters to the other child. So it's a little less than 50% of shared centimorgans with a sibling. And they've done, this is Brian Bettinger. He has created this chart. It's called the shared centimorgan chart. So we talked about centimorgans last week, and essentially they're the measuring tool for DNA. Just like an inch measures length, a millimeter measures water, a centimorgan measures DNA material. So he has created this from 60,000 known relationships. He's taken them and created a range of the shared centimorgans. So when you see someone and it says you share 500 centimorgans with them, well, here you are. And if we go over here to first cousin once removed, it's 433, but 500 would be in that range. Let's see, if we go over here to half cousin, 449, half first cousin. So you can kind of see what the relationships might be by finding the shared centimorgans on this chart. Does that make sense? All right. And there are in the handout, I think I linked to his website on it. So ethnicity is all fun, but where we get a lot of our genealogical solutions are from looking at the shared matches. The matches that we have and how they are shared with the other matches on our chart. So the first thing you want to do is review your matches. A second, it stopped going forward for me. You want to attach a DNA tree. It's important that you do, if you have a mystery and you're trying to solve it through DNA, it's important that you do a DNA tree. Because some of the tools on the different websites can use that tree to help show relationships. But I have 2 adoptions in my family, so if I have those adoptions in there, it's looking for similar names. It's not looking for necessarily the DNA match. So it'll try building those connections with the adoptive parents. So it's good to do a DNA tree. And sometimes your matches don't have a tree. As you look down your match list, you will see several that there's no tree attached. And it's usually because they want to find out their ethnicity and they're not really worried about who they match with. It can be a stumbling block, but there's some ways you can kind of get around that. But if they have a tree, look at the tree, look for some familiar names. Can you identify this person? Sometimes you'll recognize the names. Like when I go on, I can see, oh, there's my cousin Jamie, there's my cousin, trying to think who else is on there, Dale Ray. You know, you can identify them, and even if they don't have trees, you can figure out where they fit in your tree. Some sites allow you to assign a relationship or link that person to an attached tree. Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, and 23andMe all do that. So that's helpful. And it also helps the computer figure out those connections when they're trying to prompt you and say, this might be how you're related. So for instance, this is my ancestry. I'm going to move this down there. This is my grandniece, And this little icon means I've been able to attach her in my tree. So if I click on that, it'll take me to her in the tree. It's allowed me to say how we're related. And then she has a public tree with 4 whole people.
Yeah.
And then my first cousin, they have a public tree with 151, 61 people in this one, and this one has an unlinked tree. So an unlinked tree is not the same as no tree. For an unlinked tree, you would click on the person's name, and down at the bottom, as you scroll down a little, it will tell you what trees that they're associated with. So it might not necessarily be them as the home person in the tree, but it will definitely give you some surnames that you can kind of look at and see if you recognize any of those relationships. And then, like I said, some of the companies have tools that will try and help you find where those matches show up in your tree. And some of those are the Theory of Family Relative through MyHeritage and Ancestry's Through Lines. So this is the Theory of Family Relativity in MyHeritage. I have not put a complete tree in MyHeritage. I only have a few generations back. So this first tree on the left-hand side, I've only put 3 generations back in there. But what the program has done is it said, oh, you have this Leland Griffin Williams in your tree. He matches the Leland Griffin Williams in this person's tree, which goes back another generation. And they match the George Jones in this tree, which goes back another generation. And he has a sister Elvira, a half sister Elvira. And then this tree takes up where that one left off. So it goes through 5 different trees, and it tells you how confident it is in these relationships. It's 80% confident that this is how I'm related to that DNA match. And it also gives me 5 different paths that it's found to confirm that. Then the other one is Through Lines. And on this, there is in the drop-down menu, I think that's in the DNA drop-down menu, it says Through Lines. And when you click on it, it gives you a list by generation of your ancestors and tells you how many DNA matches you have that person is a common ancestor for. And then you can click on that person and it'll show you a chart similar to this. So this is for my great-grandfather, George White. So it says for his daughter Zelpha, there's 3 DNA matches that come through there. For the daughter Mary, there's 3 DNA matches that come down through there. So you can kind of see how those relationships are. And this works when there's a tree attached. So I do have more DNA relationships that I match up with through Zelpha, but they haven't attached a tree, so the computer can't create that connection. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. The other thing we're going to talk about is clustering. Another way to organize your DNA matches is called clustering. You want to view your shared matches, and so shared matches, I think shared is used a lot in DNA.
Mm-hmm.
I have a DNA match. Let's say my niece is a DNA match. So that if I click on the shared matches with her, it will tell me all of the same people in my DNA match list that we are connected to, or that we share DNA with. Because she's my niece, if we go back to that tree where the colors are coming down, She shares all those same colors with me because my sister got all those same colors and passed them down to her. So because she's kind of lower generation, lower than me, with a sibling, she's going to share all those same colors. But if I have another cousin, they're not going to necessarily share all the same colors because we're going further back in the generations. I'll explain it a little better. I can see Debbie's face going, Pam, that's just too. We'll go over it a little better than that. Anyway, shared DNA matches are the people on your match list. You pick one specific person and then you can see what matches you share with that one specific person.
Do they have to have a tree?
No, that's
That's-
really helpful. They don't have to have a tree. That was the question. But by seeing what matches you have in common, one of those common matches might have a tree that you can look at. So 23andMe gives relationship estimates for you and the chosen relative that you each share a match. So in this table, in the first column, we have relative in common. So these are the DNA matches that are on both you, second column is you, and third column is Bill. So you and Bill all have these matches in common, and I've blocked out their names. But it tells you the relationship to each of you. So this person right here is your nephew, but it's Bill's third cousin. And this person right here is your second cousin once removed, but he's Bill's first cousin once removed. And sometimes you'll have over here in the relations, like son and daughter. And that's a good start to help building up that tree if it's not there.
Which site is this one on?
This one is 23andMe.
Okay.
Yep. So, and this one is specific to 23andMe. The other sites,
Heritage does it a little bit.
yeah, they do it through the clustering. They tell you the shared DNA for each person, and then you could go to a relationship chart and it will tell you what the possibilities of that are. But MyHeritage also has the theory of family relativity that tries to build those too. So each company kind of has their own tools. So Family Tree DNA lets you choose to see who you have in common and who you don't have in common, which is sometimes very helpful to know, okay, I have these in common. Now I have this list of the ones I don't have in common. How am I related to them? You can color code family lines. Color coding is, you can do an ancestry. MyHeritage has labels. They've added a thing where you can create your own labels and attach label to the person. So you could do kind of color coding that way. Ancestry has a tool. Also, there is a class called DNA color clustering, and it's called the Leeds method. Dana Leeds developed it, and you do it with a spreadsheet and color code that way. So we can see over on the right-hand side, all these little dots. This is the Ancestry DNA color coding tool. And what I've done is assign each of these colors to a certain person. So this first one is my grandniece. So she's going to share all the same colors that I do. The second one is on my dad's side. And so this cousin shares a set of grandparents with me. This cousin, I'm going a little further back on this one because we have a DNA mystery on that one. So I do more generations back on that one. So this is a cousin on my mom's side, and he shares all of those colors with me. If you're going to do color coding, it's good to print off a chart, a fan chart. Oh, a fan chart. But for instance, this is the person in question on the fan chart. And I should have put this up here, but this is kind of impromptu. So if this is the person in question, I'm not going to need to worry about any of the matches from this side. So I can color code the mom pink, and anyone that matches on that side, I can put the pink dot on there, and I know they're not going to be the match that I'm looking for. We're looking for unknown matches. So then on this side, I want to do these 4, let's see, great grandparents, because these 2 I don't know, but these 2 I do. So again, anyone beyond those generations, I can color code with the orange and the yellow, and they're not going to be part of my mystery group. Then I have to come over here, and anyone else that's left over, I need to figure out how they're going to fit into this thing. So when you have thousands of matches and you do that color coding, it brings it down to the ones that you really need to compare. Okay, so auto clustering is another tool that MyHeritage has, and also GEDmatch has. And we're going to go to it a little later, because it's not one, it's a live website, web page. So it's not one that you can just show. But we'll do it after. Auto cluttering organizes your matches by their relationship to each other. So it's going to take your matches and it's going to put them in little clusters where there would be a common ancestor for each of those clusters. Okay, so when we're color coding, we want to assign colors to match up the family lines. I have to use my sheet for this, because otherwise I might give the answers away. Okay, so I've assigned a color to each of my great grandparents. We talked about Miranda already. She's my grandniece. So all of the DNA colors are going to come down to her, because my sister got all of these colors too. Then we have Del Rey, and he's a first cousin on my maternal side. Oh wait, went to Nancy first. I skipped over one in my notes. Nancy's a first cousin on my paternal side. So her mother is my dad's sister. So she inherited all these same colors like my dad did. So she gets these 4 colors. Then we have Del Rey, same thing, but on my mom's side. His dad and my mom are siblings. So Del Rey's dad passed these 4 colors on to him, and he gets those 4 colors. Reed is my grandfather. Reed's father is my grandfather's brother. So he only gets these 2 colors because he didn't inherit any DNA from Zelpha. So Reed gets those colors. Skip is the same thing on my dad's side, but he's related. His father is my grandmother's sister. So he only gets these 2 colors. All right, is everyone with me so far? Okay, so Skip. Oh wait, did I miss Mike? Oh, I just did Skip. Mike is my second cousin, and it's through my grandma Hazel. My grandma and his grandma are sisters. So he only gets these 2 colors. Okay, so then we have Sherry. And Sherry matches with Miranda, Nancy, and Skip, but not Del Rey, Reed, or Mike. So which way am I related to Sherry? So Sherry's a yes for Miranda, Nancy, and Skip, but not Del Rey, Reed, or Mike. So yes, definitely my father's side.
Probably your father's brother's child.
Yep, through Zelpha. Okay, so next one is Marie Louise. And she matches with Miranda because everyone's going to match with Miranda. She matches with Del Rey, but she doesn't match with Nancy, Reed, Skip, Mike, or Sherry. Yep, I heard Grandpa Henry. So yeah, because see, we have Miranda who has everything. And then we have Del Rey who has just these 4, but then it's not Mike. So that takes these 2 away and we just have Grandpa Henry. So that's kind of what you're working with when you're doing the color coding on Ancestry. Okay, they also have some tools where you can compare the individual chromosomes, where you match up on each chromosome. Ancestry does not have that tool. Some of the other ones do. So if you have a cluster of matches and they're meeting up on that one spot on the chromosome, because when you look at a chromosome mapper, it will show you exactly where on the chromosome that the overlap is. And you can say, well, they're all overlapping in this spot. So that's specific to one ancestor. They're going to share one ancestor. Family Tree DNA, 23andMe, GEDmatch, and MyHeritage have these types of chromosome comparison tools. XMatch, we talked about this last week. So a lot of the comparison that you see on commercial sites are autosomal comparison. It's the first 22 chromosomes are considered autosomal chromosomes. The 23rd pair is the sex chromosome. So for girls, it has an XX. For boys, it has an XY. The companies don't do the Y unless it's a special one. So if you're a boy and you match up on the X chromosome, it means that comes from your mother, which can be very helpful if you're looking for an ancestor on your mom's side. So this is Family Tree DNA. The first person I have to thank, this is my son Daniel's DNA. The first person is going to be me. And we're an X match. We match 177 centimorgans on that 23rd pair. There's no X match for him and his father because his father didn't pass an X onto him. He passed a Y onto him. So the X match can be very helpful in situations like that. And again, this is a lot of information for one small class, and there are a lot more detailed classes out there. There's YouTube videos on each of those specific tools that we're talking about. So if there's one tool that you want to use, I would suggest doing a search on YouTube for the tool name and the company, and they'll give you specific directions on how to use that tool. Same with X matching. There's classes just on X matching. Let's see. So when you have a DNA mystery, some of the things that you want to consider is contacting your DNA matches. One thing that Ancestry has is it will tell you when the last time that DNA match signed into Ancestry, because a lot of people will send out messages and not get anything back. And so you want to check and make sure that they're still active on Ancestry. But consider contacting your DNA matches. The first contact, Diane Southard, says, you know, kind of treat it like a first date, just a hi, how are you? I see we're matches, and kind of build a relationship before you start asking what could be some tough questions. If there's no tree, let's go sleuthing. Some of the things that you can do if there's not a tree, first of all, if there's an unlinked tree, check those. If there's a private tree, again, do the message. If there's just no tree, look for the shared matches, see if there's trees there. If that's not helpful, one thing that I do, sounds really weird, I put their name in Google with the word obit. because a lot of times in an obituary, they're going to be listed as a surviving person. And so if you put that in with my one friend that we found, her mom, she had a first cousin. The first cousin had not attached a tree, but when we put the name in and put the word obit in, she was listed in her mom's obituary. And so that was really a breakthrough for us.
You put my sister's name and then obit.
Yep, and do a Google search that way. And that, because pretty much past 1990, I would say, is the absolute break off. But past 99, a lot of those obituaries are going to be online. Because the funeral homes will put them online, the newspapers will put them online. And then, of course, there's websites specific to online obituaries like Legacy. So that's one way to do it. You could just Google the person's name.
I put them on Facebook before and found them.
Yep, Facebook is a great way. Facebook's great because a lot of times the relatives are connected with it. And you can search by an email address if you need to. If they post their email address on Facebook, it'll bring it up. Ancestry, again, you can go to their username, and sometimes if they've filled out their profile, it'll tell you kind of where they're from. Yep. Let's see. You want to create a DNA tree from your matches. So normally when you add someone to the tree, and this would be a tree that I would keep private, because this is just your ideas. You're trying to build this up. This isn't hard and fact that you want someone to go and say, oh, they're in this tree, I'm going to share it on my site. You want to keep your DNA match tree private, because you're building up to try and find conclusions. You're not ready to share it yet. But when you're creating that DNA tree from your matches, normally you have to add someone as a father, mother, sibling, or spouse to get them on the tree. There's a little way around that. What you do is, so I've built out what I know about these DNA matches, but now I have a DNA match that's not connected, but I want to start organizing that in my tree because eventually I'm going to find that connection. So I will add them as a child of someone they're not really a child of. And then you go to edit relationships and you break that relationship. And then you kind of have two separate branches in your tree that you can then build back to see how they fit together. So it's a little way around, but that way you're keeping all your information in the same tree. Eventually you're going to be able to connect those and have one perfect tree. Well, one really good tree. Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully perfect. You'll be going forever though, because genealogy never stops. So if you have a mystery you want to test or upload to multiple websites, because again, you're only being compared against the people in the same company as you. So the matches that I have on Ancestry are different than the matches that I have on MyHeritage or Family Tree DNA. I have not uploaded to 23andMe, but my daughter has, and some of her cousins are on 23andMe, but they're not on the other ones. The Williams side has tested with, well, one branch of the Williams side has tested with Ancestry a lot. The other cousins on the Williams side have tested with MyHeritage a lot. And then my Swedish relatives have tested with Family Tree DNA a lot. So by having my information out there in the different sites, I have many, many more matches. There is one called GEDmatch. It is not one that you send your DNA into, but you upload your DNA into it. And it has a lot of tools and things that you can use to help establish those matches. And again, there's classes for that one. It's one that's worth taking the classes for if you have a DNA mystery. Oh, and that's the next thing, was uploading it to GEDmatch. Utilizing tools like What Are the Odds tool on DNA Painter. So DNA Painter is a website that very, very smart man. I think there's a couple of them, but I know Blaine Bettinger was one of them. Has created tools to help you analyze your matches, see if those, and the What Are the Odds tool is essentially that. What are the odds that my ancestor fits in the tree this certain way? So all of the yellow ones are matches in DNA matches, and you put in how many centimorgans that you share with each of them. The ones that are transparent are the lines that we've established through documentation. And then the blue ones are, could my relative fit here? So in the case of this one we were talking about, where you have the person in the center, but you're looking for this person, the person that you're going to have to put in there to say, do they fit, is the person that took the test. So you'll put like child, and then I think the person that took the test fits here. And if it's green, it'll say, if it's red, it says, no, there's no chance that the person who took the test fits in that spot. But the green ones, it then gives you a score, like 1, it's possible, but the higher the number, the higher the possibility. So this one is 258, this one's 41, and this is 1. So it's most likely that the person fits in right here. And she does. So there's a lot of tools out there that can help you. Your first steps are going to be going through that match list and trying to figure out where the people fit in your tree, if you know them. And then the ones that you don't, you're going to want to build a DNA tree for to build out their trees, because the majority of the time there's not going to be a large tree, if a tree, attached to a person. So any questions?
Well, those people that just have the name and then they've got the centimorgan, but they didn't do a tree, where do you go in there to just their
Let
base?
me bring that up. That's right. I was going to show you the cluster thing too. Go to the drive.
What's my drive?
My drive is attached to your Gmail account. It's like online storage. And I thought I had uploaded my cluster link to it. But it looks like I may not have. Okay, so we probably won't look at the cluster thing. Because what the cluster thing does is you tell MyHeritage you want a cluster report, and it takes several hours, and then they send it to you in an email, and you click on it and it sends you 2 things. It sends you a spreadsheet with all the information, but then it sends you a link to a web page, and it organizes all of your matches, well, to a certain level of centimorgans, matches across here and down here, and then it organizes them by how they have a connection to each other. So you get a big cluster here and then smaller clusters as you go. Awesome. Okay, we'll go to Ancestry DNA while she's doing that. So DNA is kind of in a separate spot. This is kind of their homepage. So you have your ethnicity estimate. That's where that parent tool that they just came out with is going to be. Then you have DNA matches and through lines.
Where's that one that you were talking about, the split DNA
That's going to be under your Discover
under your story?
your
Okay.
story. See, it'll pop up because it's brand new. But then after that, they just have it as you scroll down on the right.
Okay.
So we're going to go to my match list.
Hey, Pam,
Yes.
when you're ready, I have an auto cluster from MyHeritage that I can show if you'd like,
Cool.
only if you want.
Okay, I'll show this part and then I'll have you do it. So these are the matches that I share DNA with. If I click on Miranda, over here we have the tree that she's built, which is very informative. The ethnicity that we share with each other. It gives a little analysis of that, which when you have the parent one, that can be helpful. I have one person who I help with DNA who has an African-American father and a Scottish, I think, mom. And so it's very easy to tell mom or dad when you look at, which side they're on when you look at the ethnicity. Oh, ethnicity, and then I went to shared matches. So these are all the people that Miranda and I share. We both have DNA common with them. And so then we can go down. Let's see. So, oops, this mouse is kind of sensitive.
I've got it on that.
Oh,
That
okay.
you need
I'm
to
like, I'm not
push
even
that.
touching it.
Yeah, but if you hit that center wheel
Yeah.
and push it, you'll get that other.
Yeah.
I do that every once in a while and then.
So like this one doesn't have a group. So if we click on her name and then we go to shared matches, we can definitely tell it's on my mom's side because these are all the cousins on my mom's side. And so then I can go through, oh, here's a good one. Let's do Jonas. He's got a pretty good tree and I can see there's my great grandfather right there. So that tells me how he's related. I can add him to the group and I'm going to add him to Jacob. And let's see, not Henry, because Henry's, his uncle would be the sibling. Let's see, Jacob. And I can do all of these ones.
How are you telling? Which one it is?
Because I recognize the names and it's going to be all of the ones that, oh, let's see.
Were those color codes at the top? Would that go to that person? No?
Well, you have to manually do it. So I had to add his. I'm looking for his sister because he just took a test. That's why I didn't have him color coded. But his sister is my second cousin through the Swedish side. So I would add all the same ones as his sister. But that's a lot of them. Like on this color code, the fan chart one, we only have 5. We only have 5 because the person we're looking for is way back here. So that's why there's so many colors on that one. Okay.
Okay, on these things, when you said
Sure.
that you could click something at the bottom and see who else in the thing, in your group or whatever that you're related to, that they were related to too.
Yeah, so that's going to be the
That's what I
shared
would like.
matches.
Okay, yeah.
That's the shared matches. So we click on Joy and then we click on shared matches. And again, she's going to be on my mom's side because those are all the relatives on my mom's side. And when
Okay.
you recognize someone, like here's Robert, I'm going to say, yes, I recognize him. He's on my mother's side. And he is my first cousin once removed. He's Del Rey's boy. So then that adds the relationship to him. Oh, except for I didn't hit save. I didn't complete it. Confirm. Now it adds that relationship to him. And okay, so I'm gonna switch so Trav can share his. There we go. New share. Okay. You should be able to share, Travis.
Coming. All right, do you see a cluster screen? Hopefully. Okay. So I'll start with my heritage, and I'll let you talk. I'll just, you
Oh,
know
go
more
for
about
it.
this than I do. I don't know. So what this does when, oh no, what'd I do? I just killed it.
It's okay.
I'll jump to one of these. Anyway, what Pam mentioned is that it takes your DNA matches and groups them together in clusters. And each of these squares is a group of matched DNA cousins. And so what we're looking at here is a family tree DNA through genetic affairs cluster map for my family tree DNA kit. I have another map for my ancestry DNA kit, again, through Genetic Affairs. And Genetic Affairs is just a place where you can upload your DNA to. And so the map looks very different. And I think it's because of, as Pat mentioned earlier, just the difference in sample pool that each of these companies has. And please correct me if I'm saying something
no, you
out
got
of
it.
line. But this one shows much bigger groupings of shared matches than, say, that the first one I showed. And so the way, anyway, I have another one. Which one was this one? This was 23andMe. Same kind of group mappings. And again, for me, when I'm using this, it's like, I'll take this bottom block here. I know that is from my my mother's paternal line, just through my research and searching. So I know all of these, what is it, five people are from my maternal grandfather that I don't know who he is. And that's my DNA puzzle to solve. But it shows that they're all related to each other, and I can match them with nobody else in my tree. And so I know that I'm with a large degree of certainty that they are definitely of that paternal line or paternal grandfather line. The other thing to look out for when you're using these is you see this block of clusters. It's purple, whatever, brown, and pink. It shows you where there's this whole block, the pink to the purple, are still matched cousins, but they might be matched in different layers. As Pam talked about, it might be a great grandfather or great grandmother or great whatever, but there's still DNA in there, but they're not like directly related. So if you have these gray boxes that show up, it means that there are DNA segments that match enough that the tool considers them DNA matches, but they're not super close together, I guess. I'm not sure how else to explain that.
Cool.
Anyway, does
Awesome.
that help, Pam?
Yes, and notice how when he scrolled over him, it showed the centimorgans that they match with him, but also the centimorgans they match with the other person in that square. And that can help you establish relationships. I think if you go down to the shot wells at the very bottom, you can see that Jordan and Eric, let's see, is Jordan on Susan? No, Eric. So this is Eric's relationship to the other people in the tree. Or,
This is
or Jordan's relationship.
because
to the other
it's
people in the
this,
tree.
whoever line you're on, it's theirs
Yeah.
with
With
everybody
the other
else.
people in the cluster, yeah.
Oh, and the other thing is that if you look, the name, if you go right down the middle, so the I guess the darker colors of each color, it's related to each other. So it's the same names across the top and going down. And so, you know, this would be Ray related to Ray, but with everybody else that they're related to, you know, horizontally or vertically.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions? So I would say go home and start using one of the tools, choose a tool to use. A lot of people, Ancestry does have the biggest pool, but you can't upload your DNA to Ancestry. You can download your DNA data from Ancestry and upload it to the other websites. And we talked about last week, Family Tree DNA has some specialized testing that you can do. 23 and are you talking traits?
I'm talking Y, no, I'm talking Y. Maybe
So
Y
they
DNA.
will tell the Y-DNA, but they don't do the specific Y-DNA test.
I thought they did, because
They tell you the haplogroup for the Y-DNA, but they don't do the Y37, Y111, and Y500.
that's not gonna get me happy then.
Oh, well, it's still useful information.
Well, I paid for my cousin to take the test because I needed Y DNA because
Oh,
he's a direct descendant.
and it will tell you the haplogroup for that.
That doesn't do much for it.
Okay. So, you know, see what tools are available on whichever site you tested with. Consider moving it to other tests or other sites. If you have questions about that, you can contact me. They are very careful about letting you download that information. I know on Ancestry, you ask to download it and you have to put in your password, and then they send you an email to verify that you are doing that you have to click on the link that then takes you back. And I think you have to put your password in again. And so,
Yeah, you
So-
don't accidentally.
yeah, you don't accidentally do it. But anyway, so that is
So, Pam, do they charge you for that?
to download your DNA or to
Yeah.
upload it to the other sites.
No,
Most other sites will let you upload it for free. I think there might be a charge on 23andMe. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. But to use the tools on the other sites, there's usually a fee. I want to say for MyHeritage, it's like if you don't already have a membership, if you already have a membership, it's not that way. But I think it's like $19 to use the tools.
So it's not bad.
No,
That's my
It's-
grandson used 23andMe. I use Ancestry.
so you would be able to download your Ancestry stuff, but you can't upload information to Ancestry, so you'd need to download it. And you could do it on something common like GEDmatch, where you both download your information and put it onto GEDmatch. Because usually the people in GEDmatch have a DNA mystery and they're looking for something.
And you
So-
can only find it through the mail, right? Not the email.
The Y-DNA?
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah,
like
why?
My grandfather, that we're looking for, I wouldn't be able to find that through my grandson.
No, because it has to be straight
has to be Y to
paternal.
Y.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, All right. Well, thank you guys all for coming today. It was a lot of fun. I'm gonna go ahead and close out the Zoom meeting. Thanks, Zoom people.
Thanks, ma'am.
I think